Hi, I'm Rob Hall, and this great amp was modeled after a 5E3 Tweed Deluxe, and today I'm going to show you how to build one. The 5E3 Tweed Deluxe is a great kit and a terrific amp to put together in 1 or 2 evenings. The Tweed Deluxe amplifier has become the go-to amp when looking for maximum portability and raw, uncompromising tone. With 2 6v6 tubes and a single 12-inch speaker, the tone of this amp is nothing short of amazing. But before we get started, a safety review. All tube amplifiers contain lethal voltages, often several hundred volts, which will leave burnt entrance and exit wounds in skin. In addition to burnt skin, these voltages can also cause permanent physical damage and death. Not only are these voltages present when the amp is turned on, but also for some time after the amp has been turned off. We want to stress that every piece of electronic equipment must be treated with respect. As with any construction project, there are certain tools and supplies that are recommended to complete the project. Please refer to the assembly manual for our recommended list of tools and supplies. First thing we have to do is take the back off. I'll lay that to the side. Take my masking tape, small piece. Now I want to take my Appendix D and fold it where it says fold along this line. I want to center it over exactly where it's supposed to be. Now I'm going to drill my hole. Take my bolts. Once you've got the bolts installed, you want to test fit your chassis into the cabinet. Perfect. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put the wire on the speaker first. My solder. I'll solder these 2 wires on. I like to put the terminals on top facing the chassis, which would be right here. That way there's less chance of stuff getting caught in the cable. All right, I want to take my shielding tape. I'll slowly take the back off. Be very careful. I'll give about 1/8 of an inch from the top. This double-sided board with the plated through holes is very, very reliable. I've got a real nice ground plane around my input jacks, around my input signal. That's to keep the noise level way down. It's right there. There we go. Put little holes in all 4 spots. After you mark the holes on your chassis, you want to take your PCB board and put it over your marks to make sure they all line up correctly. Here's a little modification you can do to the chassis. It's your choice whether you want to do it or not. But what I'm going to do is I want to shock mount my first preamp tube, because that's usually the one that's going to be most susceptible to microphonics. To do that, I want to make those holes a little larger. Then I'm going to take the deburring tool. I'm going to go around these holes. I want to take my little grommets, and I'm going to feed them into those holes. I want to do that now before I put anything else in the chassis, because it's real hard to do it otherwise. Look at that. That was pretty easy. I usually get them in, and then I'll take some tool and I'll make sure the hole is good. Next is our output transformer. I'm going to take my red, blue, and brown wire, and it's going to go in the hole nearest the power transformer. Now I put a lock washer on my pots. That's why you'll find there's quite a few lock washers inside the unit. I put a lock washer on my pots before I mount them. That's so it locks that control down to the surface of the chassis. I want to use my ground switch as a standby. It's a good idea to take a power tube socket, and before you install it, just slightly bend out the pins, not very far. I'm just going to put it in hand tight. All right, now it's come time to install the preamp tube sockets. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to bend the edge of these 2 sockets in a little bit so that the screws will fit flush. After I bent the edges down, I'm going to need to bend in. I'll turn them in sideways like this so that they're facing each other. Then I'm going to very carefully bend them a little bit together. It's difficult to get the board and hold all 4 of these screws in just the right way. So the trick is to take a little bit of tape. Once I've got all 4 screws put in there, I'm going to tape them down. The spacers. I'll take my board, the resistor, the white resistor, this white, the square one, goes towards the transformers. So I'm going to take my resistor that I've just bent and I'm going to install it on this jack. Now this is going to become jack number 1. And I'm going to install it between these 2 jacks, just like this. And I'm going to strip off a piece of approximately 5/8 length of insulation and put these 2 components in the holes. Now what that does is that becomes a template to exactly the spacing you're supposed to be at. And now I can solder them in. It's important that the bottom jack, the jack number 2, the number 2 input does not touch against the board. So when I install it, to verify that it doesn't, I input a guitar cable and verify that it doesn't touch anything. So this pot here, when you start to turn it, if it gets loose, you don't want it to spin around because it'll spin around and it'll break the wires once we get them screwed, soldered on there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this solder, this piece of wire, and I'm going to solder this wire to all 3 of the pots. I've got a little dental tool right here that I use, and I'm just going to scratch that pot up a little bit just to break off the oxides off the top of it. Take a little bit of solder flux, and I'm going to put it right at that spot. What the solder flux is going to do is whatever oxides I missed, it's going to boil it off once I get that soldering iron on there. And so now the solder has stuck to that bead, which is perfect. And now I'm going to come over here, do the same thing over here in this one. Since I didn't solder well, I'm going to scrape my back of my pot just a little bit. Make sure you get a good connection. What looks like a good connection may not be a good connection. It may break free, and if it does, your volume won't work. I'm ready to wire up the rectifier socket, and my red wires are going to go on pin 4 and 6. Here's my high voltage. I'm going to stretch it way over here to this contact. Always try to keep your wires as neat as possible. With that, the 2 sockets are soldered together. I'm going to twist together the end of it like this, and then I'm going to feed it into my drill. Slowly run that drill. As it spins, it twists that wire together perfectly. Go. I'll take my pocket knife, and it looks about a foot or so. I'm going to easily cut through this very softly. Do not cut too deeply. All right, this is a strain relief, and it's used to you put it around the cable, and you lock it down, and stick it in the hole, and it expands back out. It won't come back out again because the hole it's shaped to accept this. And it's in. Absolutely wonderful. This is a strain relief tool. If you're doing a lot of strain reliefs, by all means, I encourage you to get one of these tools because it is so nice. All right, there it is. I had to put a lot of heat on it to make it melt. Okay, now I wired my input from the power transformer on this terminal of the on-off switch because I want to leave this terminal open for the power cord. The power cord is going to come in here. It's going to come up around. And it's going to go in right here. If you open the fuse holder up, this contact right here is kind of up close to the front, and I don't want that to be the power cord contact because you could run the risk of shocking yourself. Someplace proper. All right, deep in the heart of North Midtown Memphis is a recording studio of world famous Steve Selvage. What a great place to play this amp.